Welcome to Belief, Being, and Beyond with your host, Granddaughter Crow. Hey everybody, Granddaughter Crow here with yet another episode of Belief, Being, and Beyond. And this time we are going to go into the earth, into the medicine, into the sacred ancestral wisdom that will help us to ground in uncertain times. It is there for all of us. And I found the perfect person because she's not harsh. She is grounded. When I say she's not harsh, she works with flower essences. Flower essences, people. So before I bring her on, let me tell you a little bit about who I have. Oh my goodness, I have Lindsay Fauntleroy. Lindsay's approach to soul medicine is grounded in over 15 years of mental health clinical practice as a licensed acupuncturist. Her sacred study with elders of the Ifa tradition and her commitment to community wellness. And this is what we need right now, is that community wellness. Yes, she is gentle, she is intelligent, but she's also fierce. She is a fierce advocate for reclaiming ancestral knowledge and having that as a collective soul liberation for the community. She is currently in her doctoral research exploring flower essence therapy as a decolonialized approach to psychotherapy. Lots of big words, lots of bright honor. Love my sister, Lindsay Fauntleroy. Oh, welcome to Believe Being and Beyond. Oh my goodness, sister.
So much for such a grand and welcoming welcome.
Oh.
I'm
Well,
so
when I got something like this to work with, I can't go wrong.
thank you. Thank
I
you.
met I met Lindsay a few years ago. I can't exactly remember the moment, but there was this camaraderie around the natural world, around it being our wisdom keeper, around it being our healer. And so I am going to get a little bit into your book, people, in our element, Lindsay Fauntleroy. Okay, so there's so many places that I want to go with you because it's like I've been having these conversations with you about this podcast in my head for like the last, I don't know, 2 years. And I'm like, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. But Lindsay, first, let's kind of get to know you a little bit. I mean, obviously, you're an advocate, you're an authority, you're an expert, you're an author, and also we'll talk about the spirit seed. But what drew you
Mhm.
to becoming a healer? And what drew you to like working not just with acupuncture, but also with the flower essence?
Thank you for that question because I feel like after, now going on close to 20 years of practice and, seeing the climate around different forms of medicine changing, sometimes I have to like go back and say, wait, what brought me here? Because that grounds me in what I'm trying to do.
Right.
Right. And so when I was introduced to flower essences, when I was introduced to um, acupuncture, it was in the context of my own healing journey and in the context of being in this moment where, like, my mind and body, as always, as we know, are so intimately interconnected. But then
Yes.
we have these moments, whether it's a health crisis, physical or a mental health crisis, or
Right.
something that makes us realize, like, oh no,
Right.
these are married, like
Right.
married. And so it was during that health crisis that I was introduced to flower essences from my sister-in-law and acupuncture through my mother-in-law. And it had such a profound impact on me. But what I remember most about that time is that this deep, deep awareness that there's another way to do things. And this remembrance of, like, the doctors are all saying one thing, and there was a lot of fear and a lot of negativity. and a lot of just like limitations in what I could access there or what was possible for me. And then at the same time, I'm in African spiritual community,
Right.
and they're saying, well, the divination says this. So the
Oh,
doctors are saying no, but the divination is saying it's possible, but you have to make these changes. And so that connection to something that defies the limitations of what we believe to be possible is, I think, a big part of what we universally need to call in right now. Like, what is possible for our collective, for our personal healing, that when we look out externally, we might not see. So
yeah.
that's where it starts for me.
Hey, you know what I love about that is because every wonderful healer has a story just like that. I mean, it's this story of initiation. It's
Yes.
the story of the hero's journey. It's a story of having to slay your own dragon
The
in
wounded healer.
order, yeah, in order to go out there and do it. And I love how you phrase it that there are limitations in some certain communities that only the divine can answer and
Yeah.
divine practices can answer. So you, my dear, are also with the Ifa tradition.
Yes.
How much could you share about that? Because I am so curious
Yeah.
and respectful because I love my ancestors and I would love to talk about your ancestors and yeah,
They love to be talked about, I think. I pray.
let's do.
Because I just feel that they all like kind of percolate around. And like even when I'm at school, they're like, okay. So there's an aliveness there for me. And what I'll say about the Ifa tradition is that a few things. One is that it is one of many, 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 many ancient and preserved and living traditions that originated on the African continent. And these traditions are eco spiritual traditions. So they're traditions that have embedded in them this interconnected relationship between the human psyche, the natural world, and all of the forces that are here with us. And so, um, for Ifa, which my elders have translated for me as the wisdom of nature. That's essentially how you would translate Ifa. Right. And so it's,
Oh my God. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so excited because I wrote the book, The Wisdom of the Natural World. So I'm like, what?
and that's the thing. I think that is often what is lost when we talk about African spirituality and African spiritual systems. There's something that happens when these practices are translated through a racialized society that makes them something other or makes them something strange or makes them something anti-Christian. And none of those things are true. It's very much um a spirituality that's embedded into the earth where our feet are touching and all of the forces of nature that guide us and that we're a part of. And so Ifa practice has a lot of different threads to it, but one of the most salient to me, which has been in my life, is learning how to listen, communicate, and be in alignment with the natural forces of the universe. And so I came to Ifa later in my career after having already been an acupuncturist, after already having been a flower essence practitioner. And it was very affirming to find a practice that um, really gave an ancestral context to the stuff that I had already been drawn to. And it kind of reinforced for me, it's like, it's not an accident.
Right.
You're not, none of this is an accident. You have a purpose, you have things that you're going to be drawn to. And now, here's a little bit more of the history of how your ancestors navigated and are doing what you're trying to do here in your clinical practice in the Americas in 20 whatever year this is.
Right. You know what's so beautiful about that is when you are in a practice and you're like, oh, well, I came to this practice because I went through an initiation. I came to this practice because of my, hero's journey, like we were just talking about.
Mhm.
I came to this practice because my curiosity, da 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 da. Da. And then all of a sudden, after 20 years, you look back and you're like, oh, Shiza, my ancestors drew me to this whole thing and let me create my own story around it.
Yes. It has
This
felt
was a
like that.
bigger plan. Because that's what I'm hearing.
Yes. It feels that way. And it was one of
Yeah.
the, I think in my journey of spirituality and healing and medicine, I've been in and out of so many different schools of study, right? I did a long, extended training in the Kemetic tradition in the priesthoods there. I did, Jungian studies and alchemical studies and, the flower essence study. And then, when I came to Ifa was like, well, yes, all of that is like, duh, you know? And so it's just been a very beautiful container for me to deepen, I think, in a lot of ways, my understanding of how this stuff all works and to enter into a worldview that I very much think has a place in our contemporary society, regardless of our ancestry, right?
Oh,
So
thank
there's
you.
Yeah, I mean, and even and I think our sisterhood, you and I, like you said, your book is the wisdom of the natural world, and that's how we first connected. And when we really think about how much alignment there was with our ancestors and their relationship to the earth and the relationship to spirit, that's something that has transcended continents. And I think it's a worldview that many of us are reawakening and remembering and saying, okay, you know, your ancestors called it air, ours called it water, we called it different things, but we're still talking about this alignment with the forces of nature and how we can not be a source of destruction to the earth or to our own destinies.
I absolutely love that. And thank you for welcoming us all in, to be able to listen and to practice and to hear what you have to say about the ancestral connection. And it just made me feel welcomed. And I'm just like, oh, cool. So, okay, in our elements. Amazing book that you have written and with so many great chapters in it.
Thank
I
you.
mean, we're looking at dream catching, we're looking at making a prayer board, and then, of course, my favorite chapter, making time for joy. That's what we're doing here
As I
today, you
clap, I'm
guys.
like, yes,
I'm
yes,
Granddaughter Crow, but I also am Dr. Joy Gray. And so, yeah, so you wrote a whole chapter about making time for me.
yes.
So sorry. No, tell us about your book because it is amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Thank you. So in our element started, I was working with flower essences and I was, using them in my home and in my family, and then started my flower essence practice. And then working with the flower essences, they were like, you should go to acupuncture school. And I was like, I'm not doing that. In the subtle way that the flower essences bring us back to our path and our calling. And so eventually, I went to acupuncture school. And while I'm in acupuncture school, I'm learning about five element theory, really influenced by one of my mentors and teachers, Laurie Deshar, who had a book about psychospiritual healing in Chinese medicine. And a lot of the psychospiritual aspects of Chinese medicine were really erased as they made their way west to kind of assimilate into this biomedical model. And so her work had really grounded me into, acupuncture is a spiritual practice, but it's also a psychological practice. There,
Really?
there's a psychology to the elements. There's a psychology to nature, which is what indigenous people around the globe in every context have been saying. And so in our element really was my way of saying, okay, this is an ancient medicine, but nature is perennial, nature is an archetype. And so really looking at the classical acupuncture theory with five element theory, which is its own psychological system, and kind of translating that through a Black girl in Brooklyn in this century. And so it's like there's aspects of it that are, when we talk about the water element teaching us about fear and that descent of our energy body, just the same way a waterfall collapses into the earth and we surrender to gravity, right? So that's what it looks like physically in our energy body. But when that happens emotionally, it brings out fear and it brings us into our depths and it brings us into our innate destiny and power. That's the water element. So, what does that look like in each of our contexts now?
Right.
And then what do we do with it? What do we do with the fear? What do we do when we're disconnected from our sense of purpose and destiny? And so that's what in our element meant to be a manual for my patients and for my students that were looking at how to translate this language of nature through their own bodies and their own psychological experiences.
That was so beautiful and such a mouthful because I feel like, you're touching on animism, and we'll go there in a little bit, and you're touching on an ancient wisdom and how it came through you in this century. And I think that that's such a sacred way to say it because I write a lot of books around the natural world, shamanism, and I always bump up against this, who am I? Like,
Mm-hmm.
who am I to bring this knowledge forth? Who am I? And I think when we define it and go, look, it is big. It is this huge spirit, and it is, I'm going to bring it forward it through my lens and offer it to you as a reader, as a practitioner, because we need this now. We
Yeah.
can't keep it on an old shelf in a library as some sacred text. Yes, it is sacred, but it's right here. It is outside. It is in the meadow. It is in the waterfall. It is in all
It's
of the
on the internet.
it's yeah.
It's everywhere.
And so it's almost like you giving yourself permission to maybe it pushed through you, like how birthing books happen. But
Yeah.
it
It's not
pushes
always,
its way through
it's
you.
not pretty.
That is not always what you think. But this it's a labor of love, and it's blood, sweat, and tears, and it's offering a part of ourself, and then we let it free in the world to help other people to be able to find this ancestral wisdom,
Yeah.
this, and it's not just, I mean, with your background in, acupuncture and clinical, all of this stuff, it's just, it's just amazing. And I think that it's really right now, I really think that it's very vitally important with so much energy being up in the air in 2026 United States people. And there is like, it's very difficult. And a lot of people don't know what to believe anymore.
Yeah.
We don't know what to believe. And you can always believe the flower, you can always believe the earth. And I think that's why it's so important. Can I ask you a question? What
Yeah.
what is a flower essence?
Yeah. So it's funny because as you were talking about the writing process, the word that kept coming up for me is like, it's really more listening than writing. And I remember when I was working on In Our Element, and I would have these like big poster boards with the flowers that I wanted to talk about. And I would be like, what do you want me to say about you? There's so much. And so it was like this listening of the flowers being like, well, tell this story and tell that story. So really what a flower essence is, it is the distillation or the resonance of a flower's consciousness into water that we can take into our own bodies to impact our consciousness. And so inherent in that is a few beliefs, right? A few understandings about the nature of the universe that are very much aligned with indigenous and Afro-Indigenous thought. And the first part of that is that nature has consciousness, right? And so when we can respect that, the river isn't just out there rivering because we need water. Like the river
Right.
has its own life and its own sentience and its own wisdom. And each of the flowers that we use in flower essence therapy have that. They have a consciousness, and they have a consciousness that is not manipulated by human ego, which is
Oh,
why, yeah, it's so they bring this reminder of essential truth, because they don't have an agenda. And so when the flower essence consciousness interacts with our consciousness, we begin to see these shifts that allow us to realign with the whole of being. And so that's a very long way of saying, you know, on the ground, a flower essence is a vibrational remedy similar to homeopathy that we take internally to facilitate psychological shifts. That's the shorthand. The longhand is a flower essence is a opportunity to interact with nature's consciousness and to elevate our own, to allow us to be worthy of being on this planet at this time, and to remember why we decided to come on down here in 2026.
right. What
Right.
the hell were we thinking?
Right. Right. And to meet up with the people that we, in a indigenous belief or in Ifa, we say that, you choose your day of birth, you choose your parents, you choose the location, you forget it when you're born,
Right.
you choose it, and you bring down your egg bay, your soul family. And through your process of becoming, you connect with the people that you have a shared purpose with, and you do that work together. And so that is how we met in our shared purpose. That is what I feel like the spirit seed has brought for me, is this egg bay or this extended community of folks that are like, how do we shift the consciousness of humanity so that we can be better, I don't want to say stewards or custodians of the planet, because I feel like in some ways we've kind of lost or
You
lost that right.
too. Side note, we got to talk about that because I do too. I kind of feel like, yeah, we're not stewards anymore. We're kind of screwing this up a little bit. So
Yeah,
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. And we'll have side conversations about that because I think that's very important. So
yeah.
what would you call it? Like, I mean, invaders? Are we invaders? Like, or is that too dramatic? Like,
I don't know. I mean, it's such a great question. I mean, the word that comes up for me is inhabitants. I
oh,
mean,
I love
we
it.
live here,
Right.
and what we decide to do while we live here is really, that's where the whole free will thing comes in. But I think that's where these practices, the divination, the flower essences, the ritual, the ceremony, the dream work, like
Yeah.
all of these things bring us back to a larger why.
I
So,
love that. I absolutely love that, Lindsay. And you keep talking about the natural world and this beautiful life force. And the way I talk about it is the same way. Like it has a personality. It is an archetype in and of itself. That's how I see it. And it is my greatest teacher. And I also love that you talk about that this belief, understanding that we chose our birthday, we chose our parents, and in a weird way, that just gives me like a sense of empowerment. Like,
yeah,
okay, if I chose this path, what then am I going to do?
yeah.
And not be, and this is part of some of what you talk about too, not be reactive,
Mm-hmm.
but show up and be, and I think that that's one thing that I'm also working on is pausing, mindfulness, consciousness, and not being reactive, being proactive and slowing down and all of that kind of stuff. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that part because you talk about it in your book too.
Yeah. I think this is where it kind of starts to begin to overlap with my work and research and community practice around decolonization. And this idea, like you said, what does it mean to slow down and be in my destiny versus being compelled or forced or influenced to be producer, 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 and feed this like kind of capitalist machine, right? And so that's where this medicine starts to take on a bit of a political force, because in order to be who we're meant to be, we have to push against, change, alter, navigate, shapeshift, manipulate, slide under the radar, whatever all the like gymnastics we have to do in order to go against the force of an oppressive system, a racist system, a misogynist system, a system that doesn't believe in spirit, right? Like how do we live as we're meant to? And so that's a big part of the work, and it's part of the practice of, getting outside of our own minds and opening our consciousness to something a bit wiser for us.
I absolutely love that. And I mean, I have so many questions. I'm gonna introduce this to you just as a takeaway. So yeah, I know. It's kind of a fun, I want to see your take on it. Maybe it's something that I'm developing, or maybe it's something that I'm just now understanding, which I should have understood before. I was talking to my husband the other night and I was like, well, in my thoughts, and then I said, you know that voice or that awareness that that you can step into when you're watching yourself think and talk? And he's like, wait, what? I said, you know the observer part of you that watches you and sees how your mind works, watches your emotions? And he's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, what's the name for that? So a week later, I'm like, I think it's called self-awareness. I think it's called consciousness. I think it's so. I just kind of wanted to toss that at you because, I mean, when I think about self awareness, oh, yeah, I know that I'm this tall. I know how I interact. I know my personality. But to take it onto a different level of going, oh, my consciousness and my self awareness is that part of me that observes what my mind is thinking, that part of me that observes what my body is feeling, the part of me that observes where my spirit is going, the part of me that observes my emotional state. What is that? Because it's a little bit more than self awareness, maybe
It
higher
is.
self. Like,
I mean, this is where Ifa has been such a magical is the best word that I can think of. Part of my life is because there's a word for that
thank you.
in
What is it?
Ifa, and it's a core concept in Ifa, which is called your Ori. So your Ori is a way that you could kind of understand it in a mythopoetic way. It's like your Ori is the part of your soul that agreed to your life circumstances and is kind of like holds your like the remembrance of your destiny, why you chose what you chose, when you chose what you chose. And sometimes you'll hear Ori referred to as like your head. Like your Ori is like your head, your higher self-consciousness, and so a big part, or arguably the main part of Ifa practice, is reconnecting to your Ori to guide you. So we say things like when you pray, if you're asking for your blessings, then your Ori is who decides yes or no, because your Ori knows your destiny. So we say none of no prayers to the Orisha or the forces of nature will work unless your Ori agrees to it, because your Ori is that aspect of almost like you could call it's your thread in the web of the universe. Your Ori connects you to your destiny and your specific place.
My
Um,
screen is like I'm ghosting. I don't know if I think I went into spirit realm because I'm sitting here thinking, "Oh, this is a fun topic. Let's see if she could add something." And I mined a jewel. How do you spell Ori?
Ori. And
Okay.
in some of the research that I've been doing, when we look at medicine, plant medicine, spirit plant medicine in Yoruba or the Ifa tradition, there's one author that talks about the ori of a plant being what we're interacting with when we make spiritual baths and things like flower essences. So I've been kind of calling flower essences ori medicine because it's like the ori of the plant interacting with your ori, and somewhere in that third space of the relationship between that communication is where the shifts happen with flower essence therapy. So I'm
Wow.
so glad you asked me that because I have not really been. I've been like, I as I'm writing my dissertation and doing my research, it's like all of these big concepts, and I'm like, well, how do we talk about? But yeah, it's. I've been calling it Ori medicine because it really is a consciousness to higher consciousness conversation that we get to be a witness to and do something with. So, yeah.
And this, on behalf of the listeners, can we all utilize that term, or do we need to reference it just out of being conscious and not like appropriating?
Yeah.
How do we do that? I know
I'm
these
making
are
a face because I'm like, I actually don't know if I have the authority to make that decision. I what I
I
what I'll say is this. I do know that there are many concepts in Ifa that are universal. You
okay.
know, every we one of the things that we say is no one is outside of Ifa, regardless of what you believe. Like everything, good, bad, or indifferent, however we name it, nothing is outside of Ifa. Nothing is outside of this wisdom. I think again, like I'm not initiated at a level where I have the authority to project what people can and cannot say or how they use the terms. I know that a big part of my work is is making these concepts that are ancestrally relevant available so that we know that we have something miraculous.
I love it.
So, whatever, however that lands with you folks, I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't tell you
I
whether
think
or not
just
to use it, but
I think that that's actually the perfect answer because, I mean, this concept came from spirit. Obviously, the ancestors are here with us. I thought it was just my little mind. And now there's this huge concept that's presented. And so, what I would say is people be very, very cognizant and always reference where you got this term, reference that it is, from how would they reference it? They could say my ori as is spoke of in Ifa or something like that, just to be appreciative of the source.
yeah. And what I would add to that is that the concept of Ori, like I'm taking something that is um huge and giving just like there are entire books written on the Ori. There's different Ori centers. There's different, the spiritual anatomy in African culture is is so intense. So
Um,
even I would say for folks that are interested or curious that there's so much literature out there about just the concepts that exist in this worldview, and none of these concepts exist out of relationship with other concepts, right? And so
uh,
it's like
right.
it's hard to talk about Ori if you're not talking about Arun and Aye, which is like the celestial realm and the earthly realm, right? It's hard to talk about Ori without talking about Orisha. It's hard to talk about any of these concepts as standalone entities.
I love
And so
that.
my invitation to the readers is to, if it is ancestrally relevant, to dive in. And my if it's not ancestrally relevant, there are analogous concepts
Okay.
in different traditions that can inform how we come back to this truth around the relationship between humanity and divinity and earth and you know this thing that we call life, and to
All,
honor that. Yeah.
yeah. So you are an educator. It's so beautiful because you're a student, but you're an
Forever.
educator. Yeah, I know, me too.
Forever and ever and ever.
But when people call me an educator or a teacher, I'm kind of like, well, I learned a lot of stuff and now I'm telling you guys about it. And if you call me teacher, that's cool, but in my own essence, I feel like I'm just a student showing people more information and giving them more resources so that they can grow and be empowered. And you come from that same purpose.
Yeah.
Tell us about Spirit Seed.
Oh, my favorite thing.
Yes.
Shout out to any Spirit Seed listeners. So spirits, right? We need a hand signal or something. That's my challenge to anyone from the Spirit Seed who's listening to drop a hand signal for us in our group chats. But so Spirit Seed started over 10 years ago as a program in flower essence therapy certification. And so this was around 2015, 2016. I had finished acupuncture school. I had been practicing in flower essence therapy for a while. And I'd reached out to Patricia Kaminsky and Richard Katz, who are the founders of the Flower Essence Society. And I was like, I want to do my own flower essence training. I said, I want to integrate more clinical practice from all that I learned in acupuncture school. And I was like, and I want to integrate a little bit more of a African worldview into this flower essence training. And they were very generous. And they said, well, we'll license your program so that you can implement our certification training in your communities. And it was the first, I have to give ourselves a pat on the back because it was the first time that outside of their home location in California that a program was authorized to do the certification in the United States. Most of their programs were implemented abroad. And so the Spirit Seed started then. At the time, it was called Oceans and Rivers. And since that time, it has grown from a certification program to a full school and community that is really centered on not just flower essence therapy, but bringing this kind of worldview of spirit and Afro-Indigeneity into therapeutic practice. And it keeps evolving because the people who come to the Spirit Seed are coming from so many different disciplines. So
Okay.
they're therapists, they're nurses, they're astrologers, they're herbalists, they're spiritualists, they're priests and priestesses. They just bring so much to the community that begins to shape and inform how we move together as a collective. And so we still offer the program in flower essence therapy, the practitioner certification. It's a 3-year plus process of intensive study and casework and clinical practice in your home community, the communities that you love and serve. But I feel that it has also expanded to include folks that want to learn more how to align with this way of being in the world. And so we have guest practitioners, guest facilitators, experts in the field who can come in and bring these worldviews. So it's not just flower essence therapy. It's really about living in right relationship with these times and being connected to the ancestral wisdom that can guide us. So, can I give a shameless plug of something that we have coming up?
Absolutely, you guys. Spiritseed.org, thespiritseed.org. Plug away, Lindsay.
Well, I was going to plug the class that you're going to be teaching.
What? I'm going to be teaching a class?
So we've been like daydreaming behind the scenes about this for probably about 3 lifetimes. But anyway, here we
Hey,
are with the
that's all.
technology to do it. Right.
Finally.
Finally, right? So, Granddaughter Crow is going to be teaching a class at the Spirit Seed, and the class is called, and I'm going to do a little drum roll, Building Allies, Animism, and the Wisdom of the Natural World. So, animism and the wisdom of the natural world. And so, I'll share a little bit about the class because I'm super excited about
Oh,
it, but I would love for you to talk about it too, because
sure.
we we had a like kind of we've always been in alignment around your ancestors do that, my ancestors do that too, and there's been this dialogue happening between us. And so when Granddaughter Crow came to our open house in the fall, you offered an incredible teaching around demystifying shamanism. And all of us felt like so deeply moved by what you brought and how you bring it, the joy you bring, right? And the deeply grounded wisdom, and the sacred connection to this work, the integrity of this work and this teaching. And so from there, we were like, okay, we got to do this. Myself, the students, we were like, we gotta do more of this. And so this class was born out of that and thinking about, plant allyship and how we build relationships with these beings that are here to support us. So I want to pass it over to you because I would love for you to share a little bit about the class as well.
100%. It just aligns with everywhere and everything that I'm doing right now, especially it's really coming to the forefront, the idea of animism. And animism basically means that everything has a soul. And so when we're talking about animism and Lindsay is talking about an archetype, and I'm talking about a personality, and we're talking about characteristics. We're talking about the natural world not as something to be dominated at all, but our greatest teacher, our friend. It is this moment when you stop being the observer, when you walk outside and you stop thinking, oh, I'm the observer and I'm just observing, and you start becoming a participant within the natural world, and you begin to understand that the bird that flew over you saw you first, most likely. And that allowed you to see it. That if you see a fox running, or if you saw a raccoon or a hawk or whatever, these guys, they knew that you were there. You need to know that you are there. You need to be able to feel seen within the natural world in any practice that you do. So it's less about the natural world being a resource and more about it being our mother, our friend, our ally, our companion, our teacher. And in order to understand what that truly means to your body, to your soul, to your spirit, in order to remember what that truly means, we're doing a class and there will be exercises. There will be journal prompts that you go out there and you actually begin to experience it in a deeper way. Now, I think that all of us listening to this podcast and everybody who attends Spirit Seed has a relationship. This is prone to focus on that relationship and help it to grow so that you can do your work in a way that is our ancestors did. Our ancestors did. When my Aunt Alice, who was a high priestess of the peyote way, I wanted to find out who taught her, who gave her a certificate. And long story short, the answer is the cactus, the peyote taught her. The spirit of the peyote taught her. And that's what I want to bring to the spirit seed as a class of animism so that you as a student can actually go, wait, let this flower essence teach me something that maybe cannot be placed into words, something that is experienced, that is animated within me. So,
I love that. I love it so much. And I love that, who we've opened this class for is for anyone who wants to really deepen their sense of earth-based spirituality. Even if you're like, what is that? How does that? Or even if you're like, well, I live in a city, so how's that going to work? But that's the thing. It's like nature is everywhere, right? And so for me, this is really about re-entering, remembering. It's a worldview, it's a life world that we enter into when we're able to hold this kind of consciousness. And then, of course, that opens up all kinds of other sensitivities and ways of knowing and wisdom and community, really. It's, there's a sense of community in nature um, that I'm very grateful for. And so I'm excited for this class, whether someone is advanced practitioner and in their training, and deeply embedded in plant wisdom, or for the person who is like, oh, I'm kind of new to this. I think what you bring kind of bridges those two worlds where it really helps everyone to deepen from wherever their starting point is. And I think that's something that I appreciate about this community, is that we're teaching each other as we go and we're learning as we go. And there's such an openness and such a grace to how we come together, and no accident. So I'm
Oh,
1,000% convinced that everyone who ends up in a classroom is exactly who needed to be there. And so,
I absolutely agree. And I just got to tell you, when you were talking, I got this visual of, oh, well, what it is to the Star Wars fans, it is the Force. And Lindsay Fauntleroy is, your Princess Leia, right? And I'm like Obi-Wan, and I'm coming into your classroom to teach something to your inner Yoda, right? To teach your inner Yoda anyway. It's thespiritseed.org. Check it out. It is not too late to sign up for this workshop. And if you're watching this in the future, still check out thespiritseed.org, where you guys host this at the Mighty Network, on the Mighty Network. Talk a little bit about just the, logistics and the functionality of the Mighty Network and how your school actually is not an in-person, it is
yes.
online.
Right. So our classes are virtual, and one of the things that we've done really well, at least this is what I've been told, and I hope it remains and continues to be true. So we've been using online teaching since 2016 when we first started. So we're not new to Zoom or to any of these other technologies, but what we have invested time in is thinking about, how do we build community? How do we build a sense of place? How do we honor this non-local connection? Because it's one of the first times in recent history that we've been able to have students whose feet are planted on such different soils across the globe and across the country. And so there's something very sacred about that. Mighty Networks is our community that is open to everyone. So we have all kinds of things happening on our Mighty Networks. We have a space that's just for practitioners. We have a book club. So our March book club reading is Wisdom of the Natural World. And so we'll all be reading that together, and we'll have some meetups around that material. So when we decided to, at first we were just using our Mighty Networks for people that were enrolled in courses. And then somewhere over the last year, I started feeling this real discomfort with social media,
Right.
and this real that extended beyond my normal introverted,
Right.
I'm going to be under a rock reading a book. So like
With
that is
you.
also true.
I'm with you on where you're going. Yes.
And so what I've been saying about the Mighty Networks is that it's community, not content. It's people, not posts. And so we wanted to open the space in such a way that there's conversation around things, as opposed to just like, look at this, look at this, look at this, because I was feeling like that kind of perpetuates this culture of consumption that really needs to be disrupted, right? Like, give me more information, give me facts, give me a discount, give me this, give me that, right? With no interaction. And so just bringing a bit of our humanity back. There's no ads, there's no AI. It's just us there, you know, posting things, sharing things, and responding to each other in real time. And so that feels really special to me. It's been very healing for me, especially during this time when it's almost kind of like psychological whiplash when you go online and you see, like, you know,
Yeah.
someone being blatantly murdered, and then you're being, sold an ice cream scoop or something like that. And you're just like, I don't know. My heart can't keep up with the pace that my brain is receiving messages. And so I'm just wanting to have a bit more of a digital safe space
Yeah.
to be in community and to share and to talk about the things that we're passionate about, to talk about nature, to talk about alignment with nature's rhythms, to talk about healing approaches that are working on the ground and in communities. And so that's what the Mighty Networks is. So if you go to the Spirit Seed website, thespiritseed.org, you'll see a little button that says join us on Mighty Networks and just come on in. We'd love to have you join our conversations, and if you're into it, share what you're into, and we can all be in continued community together.
I love that because it's not only embodying the wisdom, but it's also being in community. And that does disrupt and the system or this, whatever, we won't go there, but disrupt the system, people. Whoop whoop, absolutely 100.
In big ways,
And
small ways, right? Big ways and
exactly.
small ways. Yeah.
Exactly. I absolutely agree. Lindsay, it's such a beauty to have you here. Can I ask you a question? What flower essence pops into your mind that you want to just kind of share a little bit about? I know that I'm going over time and overboard, but I'm just a little bit more hungry. Like divination, what flower essence wisdom wants to come through?
It's Angelica.
Oh,
Angelica has been like really talking to me a lot for the
oh,
past 2 years. So Angelica is a flower essence that supports us in connecting to our ancestral guides, connecting to whether we conceive of them as ancestors or enlightened beings or guardian angels or protectors. It helps to connect us and to awaken our sensitivity to that communication. And so Angelica is it's such a popular flower for me that I put it in all of the flower essence remedies for the water element, which deals with connecting to that soul story. And so Angelica just keeps coming up and up and up and up and up and up again for me as a medicine for this time to support us in listening. And we can't, when I think about my ancestry, it's like I don't want to be over romanticized and to create this fantasy around like we have to go back to the way things were. Like that's just not unpractical. That's not going to happen.
right.
It's just not going to happen. But what is the wisdom that can help us through this current? And I think if more of us are listening to the wisdom that was erased or attempted to be erased, attempted to be um, destroyed, and to connect to something that refused to be destroyed,
Yes.
there's such healing in that for all of us. And
Yes.
Angelica is just like calling me in and holding me to task today and every day, I think.
Thank you for sharing that wisdom with us because plus the name. Come on, guys. You can't go wrong with Angelica. You know,
Yeah, you can't go.
I'll, you can't go wrong. Lindsay, is there any final thing that maybe you wanted to mention or bring forward that I haven't? Anything that you want to talk about or say, thank you to all of the students at the Mighty Network and the community or anything?
Well, if you're open to it, I would love to share an affirmation that we have as part of our Spirit Seed community. And so I do want to say shout out to all the Spirit Seed folks, and to say thank you for the heart, the love, the integrity, the curiosity, the magic that you bring, and may we continue to build that magic together, and may our community continue to grow with magic at the center of it. But I would love to share an affirmation that we share in some of our classes. It's to the creed of the Pledge of Allegiance. So for those of you who I grew up having to say it in elementary school, and we've kind of remixed it to make it more appropriate for this time. So I'll say it. We pledge allegiance to the earth, for soul awakening and remembering. As part of humanity for which we stand, one heart, spirit embodied, interconnected with liberation and justice for all.
Ooh, I'm in. That's
And
what
so,
community looks like. This is what community looks like. Lindsay, thank you so much for being on the show. I am looking forward to whatever fun things our souls decide to do that we haven't even thought of. You guys check out thespiritseed.org. Check out the online community, join, go into the Mighty Network, look around. For students who are already there, welcome the new ones because you're going to get a flood of new ones. Because let us return to the wisdom of the natural world and define the spirit that interconnects us with Mother Earth so that we can live a balanced, harmonious life with ourself internally and externally. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of Belief Being Beyond with your host, Granddaughter Crow. I love you, bells. Hit the notification. You guys know how to support this. It doesn't cost. Share this video. Put the light out there into the world for those who you think are going to get something from this. And I love you guys, and we'll see you on the flippity flip.